I'm Harvey Schwartz, and this is
Olivia Magritte.
We're going to talk about your recent PCT trip.
Sounds
and
great.
We just figured out, how many days was it?
159 days.
And how many miles per day average?
About 16. Yeah.
And how many days do you think you took off during the trip?
I feel like I took more off in the beginning through the desert, and then kind of as I was building my fitness and developing the trail legs, more rest in that time. And through the Sierra, it was a lot more kind of go, just because it was longer stretches and fewer towns to take days off in. Washington, I took some days off there for sure.
That it seemed at the beginning you were really taking your time, waiting for your blisters to heal.
Yeah.
You weren't rushing. You didn't have something in your head, some vision of where you needed to be when.
Yeah.
And as a result, it seemed like towards the end you hooked in with the perfect group for you.
Yeah. The first half of the trail felt a lot more focused on the mileage and and I feel like it felt like more of a physical challenge. Once I met the group of people that I ended up hiking most of Oregon and Washington with, when the opportunities unfolded to go and adventure on a side quest or meet new people or kind of do these more random adventures, that became a bigger priority. I think in the last 2 months, being in the woods every day, I just felt so comfortable and at peace and home out there. And I'm craving a shower and a bed and craving getting in the towns, but I think towards the end it was like, I just want to be in the woods. Re-entering into towns towards the end almost felt more overwhelming. All I came with from the trail was my singular pair of hiking shorts and t-shirt and a fleece and a puffy jacket and 2 pairs of socks, a hat. Everything that I had aside from food and water was probably, I would guess, around 12 pounds. Food definitely was the biggest weight. Like through the Sierra, those were a lot longer food carries, so carrying 7 or 8 days of food and a heavy bear canister to keep it all in, because it was a lot colder and snow. I had a lot more layers, like leggings and long john tops, and around 35 pounds. Layers that I didn't need the rest of the trail, so I definitely sent things home and had things shipped back out to me when I needed it. At one point, in Northern California, shipped home my stove because there was a really long stretch where it was so hot, and I was like, I'm not even craving a warm meal anymore. Like, I can just eat cold food, and I regretted that. Because
I was wondering.
Yeah. I went like a month without a stove, and then when I hit Oregon, my family brought it back to me. But what would you say to someone who told you hiking the PCT is now too easy because of ultralight gear and access to navigation and maps on your phone and satellite SOS devices and messaging? And I was like, well, I first would ask them if they'd ever done it, because in my mind it wasn't easy. It's making it a lot more accessible for people to be able to do this type of thing, which I think is great. Some people had an umbrella for both rain and sun. For the first half of the trail, I hiked in shorts and a long sleeve sun hoodie with a hood. I was pretty diligent about sunscreen.
See?
The desert in Southern California, I entered that section in April, so it wasn't super hot and dry in comparison to, I'm sure, later in the summer, but there definitely were longer stretches without water, longer water carries. There wasn't really any water at all for 50 miles or so. trail angels, which are like members of the community, would stock like 50 or so 5-gallon
Oh, really? Wow.
like things of water
Huh.
and like a water cache, which was just incredible that people go out of their way to sustain those, to make that possible for hikers to depend on that. Chug half my bottle and then fill up again. I feel like every night we would all cook our own dinners and carry all our own food, but I feel like it was every night like, here, have a bite of my meal. I kind of pass everything around and come up with these funny concoctions of rice and noodles and whatever else you have to throw in. Definitely got tired of eating the same food every day. For breakfast, I would pretty much always do oatmeal, and I would cold soak it overnight. Throw in some like dried cranberries or chia seeds sometimes, and peanut butter, sometimes some like cacao powder, granola bars, kind of energy bars throughout the day. And then lunch, I would generally do some sort of wrap, meat and cheese, quinoa and dried veggie mix, or noodles. I would always cook dinner, so either some sort of like rice and like beans or pasta, a lot of ramen, instant mashed potatoes. Definitely not the most healthy and balanced diet for sure. It wouldn't matter, and honestly was just like trying to get in as many calories as you could, but I do feel very excited to be back to a kitchen. Super have a go-to. I feel like a lot of towns, kind of the main thing was like a brewery of some sort, so I feel like a lot of times it was kind of more like a sandwich, or like, I mean you could get a salad too, but you know, more just kind of like typical brewery food. The biggest thing I was craving was just like a home-cooked fresh like salad. Pizza.
What about the cinnamon rolls and Stehikin?
Those were to die for. I was only there for a day, but it was just such a little wholesome, tiny, I mean there wasn't much there. There was like one lodge and a restaurant and post office, but it was just so beautiful and felt so just like a little like fairyland. There was a bunch of bikes in the city that you could just ride. They're just like communal bikes, and I would love to have biked out to the bakery. And there was this guy named Carl that had this beautiful vegetable garden that I would have loved to go and check out. Before, kind of the few months leading up before the trail, I was having a tendonitis issue in my foot. Leading up to April, the injury was getting better, and I was just kind of like, well, I need to give it a shot. But the physical therapist that I was seeing at Western here prior to the trail had thought that the injury had kind of healed itself, and told me that I should expect to experience pain in the beginning, as my foot wasn't, at that point, still wasn't going to be used to the stress of walking on it every day. I think the biggest cause of that was my feet were just swelling so much because of repeated pressure and pounding on it every day. Your feet might grow. I went up 2 full shoe sizes. I went through 4 or 5 pairs, I think.
Wow.
My feet were swelling, and then my shoes were becoming too small, and that was, I think, the main cause of the blisters. Just change out your shoes every like 500 miles or so. I did have a little like Garmin InReach, I think is what it's called, and I would say the vast majority of people carried one. I hardly ever used it for texting.
Mm-hmm.
It was more just like I felt safer having it because it has an SOS. When I entered the Sierra Mountains, there was still a lot of snow, and so pretty much every day we were waking up around 2 or 3 a.m., 2 to 4 a.m. I would say, to be able to start hiking while the snow was still firm. And when it got super soft, you would just be like post-holing, so stepping through the snow sometimes up to your waist. It was a slog. Pretty much every day you were going up over a mountain pass, which was incredible, but yeah, it was kind of waking up super early and trying to get as much mileage done as you could while the snow was still firm, and then oftentimes you would call quits and stop hiking around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Going into the Sierra, people were a lot more intentional about entering with a specific group of people, just from a safety standpoint, with going over the passes and mountains and in more kind of technical, sketchy terrain. It definitely felt important to have people that you felt safe and comfortable with, and kind of you were on the same plan as. I had met in the desert, and I think kind of had similar goals of the miles that we wanted to do. And in a like couple 100-mile section, you'll kind of be leapfrogging around the same people. Felt very lucky to meet so many people from all over the world and just all different backgrounds and walks of life. People were probably late 20s, early 30s.
That was the largest group.
That was, yeah. But totally people of all ages. There was a family of 9.
9?
The youngest kid was 18 months old.
What do you think's the oldest person you met on the trail? What would you guess?
70s. People who had just quit their job and maybe were in this big transition of life of having to quit their job to come out to the trail and then wanting to kind of change paths and do something else afterwards, which felt cool. I feel like there were a lot of people that were in a similar boat to I am at right now. There was 3 days where I was alone and I never saw another person. Maybe like 3 weeks out of 5 months. Knowing that I was making all my own decisions and doing things for myself, which I think felt empowering. We would kind of the night at dinner kind of plan the next day, like, oh, we're kind of looking at camping at this campsite tomorrow, and here's looks like a cool place where we could have lunch, maybe at this river or this lake. But then it was kind of, you would wake up. Generally throughout the day I would be hiking alone. Listen to an audiobook or music or a podcast if I wanted to, and just kind of unplug. We'd generally all have lunch together. Very extroverted, in a really goofy and silly fun way, which I totally appreciated and do think I contributed to, but I also think at times I appreciated having my own space as well, and was like, wow, that's something that I would love to do at some point. And then one of my best friends from home hiked the trail in 2023, and so I think hearing his stories and everything incredible that he had to share about it made me feel a lot more inspired and excited to do it, and made it feel like something that I could do, just knowing that someone else that I'm friends with had done it. Generally people start the trail between March and May. Logistically, graduating and the start dates lining up, wanting some sort of concrete plan of, okay, well, at least I'll know for the next 5 months that I'll be walking every day. Internally, more my motivation behind it was just to do something that felt like a really big challenge and something that was gonna push me and make me more confident in who I am and just my ability to kind of do something big for myself. 1-person tent and sleeping pad and quilt, which is like a sleeping bag but is the new like ultralight thing where it doesn't have a zipper and
saves an ounce.
Yeah. I slept phenomenal. It became so comfortable. I think it took a little while to kind of get used to it, but it got to a point where I slept way better on my sleeping pad in my tent than I would when I would go into town in like a bed. My pad popped a few times. That was frustrating, so I'd have to like inflate it and soak it in a lake and try to find where the hole was and patch it. And yeah, the last like month of the trail, every night I would wake up and have to blow it back up. But carrying a lot of weight, or I don't know, but yeah, tried my best to stitch it up with dental floss a couple times, and then eventually the company Gossamer Gear sent me a new pack.
And you got that in Ashland? Was it at the co-op where you got it, or somewhere else?
They shipped it to me, like, to the post office. Last night, a mouse chewed a big hole in my backpack. The last night on trail.
The last night?
Yes. But it's okay. I can patch it up. Tons of rattlesnakes, which was a bit scary at times, because they would just, like, you turn a corner and there would be one on the trail, and I never heard about anyone getting bitten or anything. And they're pretty, like, see you and don't want anything to do with you.
So you would just walk a wide swath around
I would
them?
usually just kind of wait and let it cross the trail. But I was looking up on this hillside and I saw a deer coming by, and then I saw this coyote that was lying on the hillside watching the deer. Maybe almost like it was gonna try to attack it. So I was watching this, and as I was watching that, I was filming it, and this other coyote comes right down the trail, right towards me, and looks at me, and it was definitely scared. It didn't know what to do, and kind of kept coming towards me and turned around, and definitely was confused, and then it, like, ran off the trail. But the first night in Northern California, so, like, or I guess north of Tahoe, like Truckee area. So pretty much the whole section of the Sierras, you were required to carry a big bear canister that would hold all your food, and more just at nights, just you'd kind of leave it maybe 20 yards away from your tent, just so if a bear were to come, it would go to your food. I sent it home in Truckee, and the first night without it, I never saw a bear the entire Sierra. I had my food in a bag and hung it maybe 6 feet in the air on a tree. I didn't really do much of a proper bear hang, but I woke up to it sniffing my food. I heard, I think, just like kind of rustling in the bushes, and I thought maybe it was one of my friends. But then the sound continued for a while, and I was like, what is going on? So I turned my flashlight on, my headlamp on, and I could see it there, and I was like, oh no. I think we were more worried that it was going to come back and try to go for the food again. And then I saw another bear in Northern California as well, off the trail, and it saw me and ran right away. I think that was the most, like, in my life, definitely the most, like, exposure I've had to people from all different countries, which was so beautiful and a cool experience. And I think I feel a lot more excited about traveling and just, like, maybe living outside the U.S. Living out of my backpack for 5 months, I think it showed me that life can be simple and that you don't need a million things to be happy. Everything felt so simple, and I know that life off trail won't ever necessarily feel the same as that, but I think just in the sense of there was one goal every day of walking north, and I think some of those people would kind of hike north for a section and then hike south, have grown and learned so many things in so many ways. I think you are kind of detaching from society, and while I think you can, like, totally impact the people that you are immediately around on the trail, I think there is kind of this glimpse of you're detaching from the world around you and maybe aren't able to, like, make a difference in a way or help people in a broader sense because you're kind of giving all this attention to yourself and your own journey.
Being a better person yourself, then you will have more to give the world.
Exactly,
later.
Yeah. And I think that was something we both agreed on and talked about a lot as well. And it was such a unique experience when being around people, everyone's kind of on the same journey in a way, and everyone's united kind of around this similar concept and shared feelings of challenge, and yeah, I think that felt so beautiful, just always knowing there's people 2 days ahead of me that I know and love and care for and will be there, and there's people 2 days behind me that the same. Angels kind of is what they're described as, people that either you show up to a dirt road in the middle of nowhere and there's someone there cooking you a sandwich or blending you a smoothie on a hot day in the middle of nowhere.
I interviewed you back in September when you had just finished the hike.
Yeah.
And now it's 3 months later.
Yeah.
So what's different now than 3 months ago in your mind?
I thought that returning back to kind of normal life would feel really difficult, and I feel like a lot of hikers kind of talk about this like post-trail depression, and I do think that that is kind of a real thing. Easier than I thought, and I think the first like month and a half of being home were like, I just was in this headspace. I feel like a headspace I'd like have never been in before, where I just was like feeling so like optimistic and happy, and I think just like coming from being in this beautiful community and around so many people that were just like so grateful to be doing the thing that they were doing. And I think I'm like, okay, every day I'm gonna like do something that feels kind of like intentional or meaningful, like whether that be like reading my book or like journaling before I go to bed or like going on a run, or my body physically felt ready to be done from Ashland, Oregon on. So the kind of like last third of the trail, I definitely think I met a group of people that I would say it was kind of fate. Yep. There's this town called Kennedy Meadows. I wouldn't really say it's a town. It's like one general store and like kind of a couple restaurants that definitely cater to the PCT hikers. They all like have like camping, and that was kind of like, you hit Kennedy Meadows after hiking like 700 miles and you're like at the end of the desert, and that's kind of like the gateway to the Sierra Nevada. Some like couple came up and they were like, "Are you Olivia?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they had this huge birthday cake for me, and I guess my mom had posted on a kind of like PCT like Trail Angel Facebook page, buy and bring me a cake, and I guess like a number of people reached out and like were happy to do it, which was really sweet. Me starting the PCT, my mom was down in San Diego area like a couple weeks before, and her and my stepdad ended up going on a hike that happened to be on the PCT, and she sent me a photo of this kind of like trail signpost, and it had a rock underneath it, and she was like, "When you hit this sign, like dig under the rock and you'll find some sort of little present." And like, I hope I find it, like I hope I can recognize this sign, but I did.
You met your mom twice on the trail? Yeah,
she and my brother, her and my brother came down in Ashland for a weekend. PCT throws, it's called like Trail Days, every year at Cascade Locks, like a tiny little town at the Oregon-Washington border along the Columbia. They do a big like hiker festival and it was cool. There's like this island kind of in the Columbia, and all the hikers camp on the island, so it was just like a sea of tents. And Idlewild, the mayor of the town is this golden retriever named Max that is just like so adorable, and every day like this car comes through town with like a little Mayor Max thing on it, and he like sits somewhere and you can take pictures. And yeah, well I never really had trouble with mice. Like, you definitely would hear them, and like at night, like going out to use the bathroom, whatnot, with your flashlight, sometimes I would see them like scuttling around. I got lucky that I never really had an issue with them until the last night. I realized that they chewed a hole through my backpack. So it was always like, okay, everyone go find the most medium-sized stick. But whoever actually had the most medium-sized stick had to like go get the water for the group or something, like some chore that you didn't want to do. And so that one was silly because some people came back with like sticks bigger than this room, and some people came back with like sticks this small. But there was a church that let hikers stay in their like camp inside, which was super nice because it was like so hot out, and so you could like camp inside, and that was really great. But somehow they came across this stuffed animal donkey at the church and took it with them, and we named it Paul, and like it had this whole makeover, like people like gave it an earring, and like I don't know, it was just a weird looking donkey, but it turned into this thing where like, yeah, generally we'd play a game and whoever lost like would have to carry Paul for the next like 100 miles or so, and we'd always like would have Paul like on the outside of your backpack. It was Lolo Pass, which is like up over Mount Hood, and there was kind of this kind of parking lot, and or it was like a gravel road, and I had kind of separated from my group for like a day, and my phone was dead, so I had no way to know if they were like ahead or behind me. And eventually I found out they were behind me, so I sat and waited, and some guy came over, like a day hiker, and gave us his leftover Thai food, and he had this like herb book that had, or like medicinal plant book that had information on all the like kind of medicinal plants that you could find in the area, and he showed us a few, and then that evening we found like all 5 of the plants that he showed us, and we like made a bunch of tea, and yeah, I think it just was like a really like kind of special day on the trail. You know your friends maybe a day ahead of you, but it can take like weeks to finally like catch up to them, like, because then you get to town and maybe one person like leaves town right away, and maybe you take an extra day, and then I don't know, like a metal post that had like you could open it up and there'd be a book in there, and so then you could sign your trail name and like the day you got there, or even like the time you were there, and that was always fun to get to, because then you would be like, oh, like bushwhack's only a day ahead of me. I think a big part of the magic of the trail was just like living it in that moment, and like, yeah, I just thought it was like a really like beautiful analogy. I'm thankful for Harvey for making this happen for me to have something to look back on.
Do you think it's possible you may have a child or a grandchild that someday may watch this video and find out what mom or grandma was like?
Maybe, yeah, that would be cool.
Do you want to wave to them?
Hi.